Phil Delgado retired from the U.S. Navy as a lieutenant commander, working on various ships and shore duty assignments. During his second career, he contributed significantly to the multinational NATO Seasparrow Missile System Program Office in Washington and the Joint Strike Fighter F-35 Program Office as one of the world's most advanced stealth aircraft systems. Phil is now Quartermaster of VFW Joseph J. Clinton Post 399 in Westport. Under his leadership, the VFW has evolved from a small, relatively unknown club to one of Westport's most important institutions. If you haven't been there, and it's at the intersection of Riverside and Saugatuck Avenue and Treadwell Avenues, you're missing a Westport gem. So, Phil, welcome to 0680, the podcast.
Well, thank you, Dan, very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to go ahead and talk about our Veterans of Foreign War Post 399 and the American Legion Post 63.
You got it. First, let's talk about you. You served in Bosnia, right?
Yes, I did. I was actually there in Sarajevo, there as part of the implementation force. I was there at day one. That was a very interesting situation. We left on Christmas Day. I was in Europe, and the four-star admiral there, who was the commander-in-chief of Naval Forces Europe, was in charge of it was called I-4, implementation force. So they said, hey, we're deploying on Christmas Day. It's out of our control. It's a NATO decision. And so I thought I was on shore duty. And,
wow.
Next thing I know, we're on a C-130 heading into Sarajevo and lived there in Tito's Villa, downtown Sarajevo, and that was very interesting.
Wow.
And very sad, too, at the same time.
It's a tough situation.
Very, very tough.
So how do you end up as quartermaster of the VFW in Westport?
Well, that's a very good question. So I went ahead and, as I said, I did a whole career in the Navy, retired, and then worked in aerospace for years and years, and went ahead and bought a house here in Regents Park, and thought, hey, look, there's a VFW over there. I'll go in there and introduce myself, and it was. I started going to meetings, and they were going through some changes. This is 4.5, 5 years ago, mm-hmm. and kind of like I mentioned before, it was kind of like on the Titanic and the Titanic sinking, and these guys just want to argue about the selection of the band, and so. One of the first things we had to do was to go ahead and stop smoking, and that was a very sensitive issue. We lost some members who said, hey, if I can't smoke here, but it was a business decision, and I think that really was the very beginning to reinvent ourselves. And when I talked about our strategy, I said, hey, well, look, the strategy is already there. Our mission, it's part of the VFW, and that's to go ahead and support the veteran community and to support the community in general. And so I said, that's our pillars, our two pillars right there. And so we started doing blood drives. And I like to say that right now we've just done in fact, on the 22nd of December, we have our 42nd straight monthly Red Cross blood drive. Wow. And I'm happy to say that we're the premier location for blood drive donations, and not just in Fairfield County, but for the region. And we've had over 1,800 donors that have come in. And I like to say that 1 unit of blood, Dan, saves the lives of 3 people. So that's really significant that we're able to do that. But we're really, again, an advocate for the veterans. And, I'd like to just take this opportunity to say that there is an epidemic within the veteran community with these guys from Vietnam that were exposed to Agent Orange and the effects, and we've seen that firsthand. I can't tell you how many people here in our town that have been affected by Agent Orange, where it affects their nerves, and there's no cookie cutter answer on because everybody's different.
So what does the VFW do for
we're
veterans?
A resource, so we're a resource and an advocate to get them into wherever they need to go, whether it's, so we do have a veteran service office at the VFW, which is has nothing to do with the VFW. It's actually the state of Connecticut. And so that's a resource, and they come in a few days a week, but we're hooked up with those guys so that depending on what it is, we can go ahead and refer. We're a referral. So we're able to help these guys, whether it's Agent Orange, because again, that does affect your DNA, and that means your kids, it's passed on to your children, and the word isn't out there. So now a lot of our people, their kids have issues, weird cancers, and they go, "Hey, where'd you live all your life?" They go, "Actually, here in this area." Well, but their DNA's been altered through Agent Orange. So that's one issue. And then not to mention post-traumatic stress, PTSD. And what happens is that, because we've seen this firsthand so over and over and over again, is that as people get older, they start to reflecting more on their lives. They have more time on their hands. They start remembering all of these horrible things that they witnessed. And so that plays into, issues. So we can go ahead and refer them to, the VA, and most times they're not even enrolled in the VA hospital. So we can help them. Again, we're a resource to get them into the system. And then people say, "Hey, I wasn't in combat." Well, we're also the American Legion. And so a veteran's a veteran, and that's how we feel here in Westport. And so we have the American Legion. So we have the 4 pillars of the American Legion. So we have the membership, and then we have the auxiliary, we have the Sons of the Legion, and then we have a American Legion motorcycle group. A bunch of guys were coming to the VFW with motorcycles, and they were already in the Sons of the Legion. I go, "Why don't you guys want to start a motorcycle group, and I'll contact the American Legion." And so now we have over 100 members of the American Legion. And I like to just say that the American Legion, again, just remind everyone that they've been around for 105 years here in Westport, and they have a rich history here in Westport. And when we started, there was only about 8 members in the American Legion. Most of those guys lived out of state. And the fact that we have over 100 members for the American Legion in the last 2-3 years is really a testimony, and it's one at a time. That's how you get those guys, one at a time.
So let's talk about the veterans community in Westport. Obviously, you've got Iraq and Afghanistan, and then you've got Vietnam, Korea. Are there World War II vets still
there's a few around, more Korean vets, and unfortunately, because those guys are probably in their hundreds, they're not able to get around. And recently we had our I know for our Memorial Day parade 2 years ago, we had a World War II vet, and she was over 100.
And last year as well, Sergeant Pepper.
Absolutely.
Private Ben Pepper.
Exactly.
Private
He's got
Ben
a great
Pepper.
story.
Yeah.
And we were just honored that he was able to do this. And then he's a perfect example, another guy who really never went through his whole life, and hey, life's complicated, and didn't get involved, but now reflecting back, and this is what was important to him. But I like to just say here in Westport, we have over 660 veterans, and I know you're looking at me and wondering, "Phil, how do you know that?" Well, because when I went to register for my tax exemption for my house, it's just a percentage, I said, "Well, how many people apply for this exemption?" They go, "Well, 660. I go, "Oh, great. Well, that's good to know."
Wow.
So, veterans do get a percentage exemption for their cars and their houses. And it's surprising how many veterans that I talked to did not know that. And so they...
Should be the first thing they tell you when you...
I would think. But again, if no one tells you, you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's what I found out. But it's not just Westport. I think all the local towns here give a discount or a percentage for houses and property taxes and car taxes. So it's just a small thing. And that's, just a small thing. But again, we're a resource for everyone.
Yeah.
And as far as the community, we got our jazz night every Thursday for the last year and a half. I was
going to say, in addition to being a club for veterans, you're really part of the community.
Well, one thing about Westport, as you know, is that it's very welcoming, and they're very supportive of the veterans. Rabbi Greg Wall came in. Actually, his wife came in. Actually, probably a few years ago. Walked through. Goes, hey, this really, I like this place. I'm going to call my husband. And I think a lot of this is karma. I think it's meant to happen. We were actually beginning of COVID, and she was there in the parking lot, and I walked out there and said, hi, can I help you out? And she says, well, I was just exercising and thought I'd stop by and look at the VFW. So I invited her in, and she goes, hey, this is really interesting. I'm going to call my husband. Do you mind? I go, no, I'm not going anywhere. And so he came down, and that's how the conversation started. And so now for the past year and a half, we've had every Thursday night, we've had these world-class musicians that come in to Westport from New York to play. We have
called Jazz at the Post.
Jazz at the Post. We have a 1937 Steinway Model M piano that was there at a place called the Village Gate in New York, which is legendary. And it's on loan. It's actually owned by the Fairfield Jazz Society, and everyone loves to play on that piano. It's really a magnificent piano because every jazz great that you've ever known has played on that. Nina Simone. I could just go on and tell you all the jazz greats.
So people come and it's accessible. It's right off exit 17. And do they say,
it's smoking
wow,
hot.
I never knew this was here?
Everybody's. In fact, there's so many people from New York City that come besides the musicians. They all come in. In fact, I think the whole group last week was from New York City. Oh. And people coming from New York all the time. They go like, hey, this is just great. The prices here. It's like $15. It's a donation. Are you kidding? Yeah. It's $100 in New York.
Yeah.
And for the same venue. And
you got food.
And we have food. It's Chef Derek puts the food on. It's very affordable and it's optional. And you got the bar, there. And again, people think that the VFW is, again, Saturday night in a mining town. But that's not true. Unless we have a special event, there's nobody in there because, but we're happy to host events.
You got the folk music series on Sundays.
Folk, exactly. We have the folk, Suzanne Sheraton, who's dynamic. We have on every other Friday, we have the Yacht Rock. Matt Zako comes in, and he's got his own following. They come from White Plains all over. So it's...
What else? You just had a viewing party for the Army-Navy game with a pig roast.
Army. That was a huge event. A lot of camaraderie.
Yeah.
But that was fun. And that's where we want to be there for all veterans and the community.
I was there.
Everyone's welcome. I don't want anyone to ever think that if you're not a veteran, you can't come in there. That's not true. We're open to the entire community. We want everyone to come in. It's a resource. I know right before we started, I said, hey, just yesterday, Dan, I ran into someone that knows your sister. She hadn't been to the VFW, I don't know, maybe 40 years. Class of Staples High School. She came in, she goes, oh God, this is a crown jewel. He says, no, we want to have an event here for the alumni. This is fantastic. Yeah. I love it here. Look at this view. She goes, I'm sold. We want this room where I am right now. I said, absolutely. We'll throw in the bar too, and
I was there a couple of weeks ago for the EMS had an event, And then downstairs, there was a
Air Force band.
baby shower.
Oh, baby shower.
And those they were having a great time. So it really is, a community resource.
It is a resource. And we just had this past month, we had the U.S. Air Force jazz band, and they were downstairs. And it was, it was fantastic. These guys were just incredible. So we're happy to have that.
You're the quartermaster. What does a quartermaster do?
Well, that's a good question. I think everything. But I'm the head janitor. I'm the actually the financial guy. I shouldn't say that. But hey, we're all, it's a volunteer organization, and you can't do it all. You can't do it alone, and you can't do it without help. So it's a collaboration, and we have, again, over 300 members, and no matter what it is, whether it's a plumbing job or whatever, I know who to call to get assets. I may not have the skill set, but I know who to call. And that's what's great about Westport, is that everyone's very supportive. And because, it's an older building, we have our own challenges. We have our marina back there. We have 34 slips, and I'm trying to get that dredge.
Who has boats there?
Well, actually, it's not just veterans. We have the community comes in. They can sign up and get slips. I have a boat slip here at Campo. I can tell you it's a 15-year waiting list. You're not going to have that 15-year waiting list there at the VFW. I'll tell you that right now. And we have a fire pit back there, picnic chairs, tables, a whole area to sit. We have the scouts use that area all the time for flag retirement ceremonies, which they love to do. We have the Reefs Across America this coming Saturday. We've had, a huge support for that, thanks to our auxiliary, Patty Condub. She did a great job on organizing that. I know you've seen it on your blog and in our newsletters, and so that's going to be this coming Saturday at Assumption Cemetery. I know at 12. It's open to everybody, but it's really great to honor our veterans in Westport. There's so many of them. And the fact is we've been around for 100 years, and there's a reason why.
How did it start? What's the quick history of VFW?
Well, the VFW actually was, so Joseph J. Clinton was actually the last son of Westport killed in World War I, and just a few days before the end of the war. And so when his mother passed away in 1947, she gave her house to the VFW. And the VFW actually started in 1920, but they didn't have their own house. So it was on South Campo Road by the bridge, the railroad bridge. And actually, I think there's a zoning issue, the way I understand that. And it really shouldn't be a club. So they went ahead and bought the property there at 465 Riverside Avenue, and built the building that's there right now, along with the marina. And so, so we moved in 1970. So it's been over 50 years that we've been there, and it needs repair. And like I started to mention, we're right now trying to raise money for the the dredging. And actually, that's an interesting story. We started that 3 years ago, and the price that we were quoted at the time, they said, hey, like for the lab testing, it's $8,000. Well, to date, Dan, we've spent over $50,000 on just the lab tests because the environmental things. So everything, just like building a house now is maybe 3 times the amount that it was, 3 or 4 years ago, because everything's going up. So it's a challenge, and that's part of our puzzle economics as the quartermaster to look at. It's part of the pie that keeps us going. Yeah. And so we need to go ahead and, we got to get the dredging. That's $100,000. We got to do the work on the marina to rebuild the marina, dry rot. There just needs to be, repairs. It's an old, the infrastructure needs to be changed. So again, we're volunteers. We got to get the band back together.
So the next 100 years, what do they look like for the VFW?
Well, as long as we get the dredging done. Well, I mean, we're going strong. I think we're going to be okay, Dan. And because we're here, we're a resource, and I think that you need everyone's help to go ahead and support us. And again, everyone's welcome to come in to support the veterans. And it's not just combat veterans; it's all the veterans. And there really is a need. And as I mentioned to you, I think with the young veterans that we have now from Afghanistan, Iraq, people say, "Hey, I don't see a lot of those guys here." Well, they're actually members, but they're so busy supporting their own families, and in just a matter of time, they're going to be sitting here where I'm sitting right now talking to you, is because right now they're busy with their families and making a living, and they just don't have the time in the day to go ahead and be involved as they'd like to be involved, but they are members. We have the membership of these other services. So I think that I'll just be replaced, just like I replaced somebody from, or the American Legion. We replace guys that were from the Korean War.
Yeah.
And they're still involved, by the way. They're still involved. They haven't been forgotten. They're just, kind of passing the baton.
So last question, any message to the Westport community about VFW?
Please come in and support the community. And again, it's just not just the veterans, but a resource for the entire community.
When are you open?
We're open on Wednesdays through Sundays, and we usually close around 8 o'clock, depending if there's a special venue. We stay open till 10 or so, like on Jazz Night. But ordinarily, we close up by 8. And I'd love to be open on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Somebody can knock on the door and just walk in?
It's open. The door's open. And you don't have to knock. Just come on in. It's unlocked. It's not again, it's everyone's welcome.
That's great. Phil Delgado, Quartermaster of
Thank you very much.
VFW, Joseph J. Clinton, Post 399 in Westport, right there on the corner of Saugatuck and Riverside Avenues. Walk on in and say hello to Phil.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You bet.